A lot of top performers are losing authority because they're trying to prove their utility. And this is what I call the employee mindset. The problem is, utility is not the same thing as leadership readiness. And an employee mindset, though, is not a personality flaw. It's an operating system where you're trying to treat work as labor to be delivered. Now, there are 7 workplace habits that read to senior leaders as an employee, as a role occupant with an employee mindset, instead of being read as an enterprise strategist. I'm going to talk about these 7 habits, what they are, and I'm also going to relate them to an organizational reality, because leadership don't look at habits, they really look at leverage. They really look at strategy. They really look at the output and the payoffs. So let's get started. Habit number 1 is performing busyness as proof of value. And here's where it comes from. This is where we have this belief, because we have been trained, we have been conditioned actually, to have the belief that being busy is a sign of commitment. So therefore, we ought to, and we should prove our busyness, demonstrate our busyness. And the rationale goes like this. This is our conditioned rationale. It's like, when we're busy, it shows that we're committed. And being committed is important. So therefore, I'm valuable when I'm busy. That's the whole premises, the rationale. And it's a loop, it's a cycle. We're conditioned to believe this. But here's a problem with that. When you're busy, your busyness depends on your time being converted into output. So it's the output of your time. So when senior leadership sees you as busy, what they're really reading into that is, well, this person is converting time into output for the business. So therefore, they're reliable, they're dependable, and they're a good support. We need them here because they support the business behind the scenes, or they support the business. They help things run smoothly, and they're reliable and dependable, which is not the same thing as being a strategist, enterprise strategy level. And here's the thing about it. When you are busy, it's not a signal of importance. What you're signaling is dependence and reliability in your current role. And when you're in your current role, just because you're committed, just because you are busy, it doesn't mean that you're able to be visible in front of senior leaders. So this is the organizational reality, especially the larger the company is and in remote circumstances. And if you're working for scaled organizations, for example, in a conglomerate, then busyness does not translate to being visible in front of senior leaderships, especially if it's layers above you. And that's where advancement and opportunities can be had. And that's where true value gets manifested, is in those higher stages of visibility. And when you lack that visibility, this is where it becomes very difficult to scale that proof. If you're proving your value based on your busyness and based on your output through the time you put into it, then it's really difficult to scale it. And as a result of that, when leadership sees you, whether they do or not, or your immediate leadership sees you, what that reads is, well, it's unleveraged thinking, unleveraged. And that's why I always say that individuals who are busy, they're usually the ones that are brilliant, really good at what they do, dependable, reliable, they're committed. And because they have high income skills, but they're under-leveraged in their impact. Habit number 2, reporting activity instead of decisions. Now, this is where I hear a lot of individuals, top performers who desire to step into executive leadership. It could be a director level position, a VP level position, where I notice a pattern, right? When I work with these individuals, I notice a pattern, is that they report on status updates, activities, they report on their progress and status. And here's the thing, status updates and progress reports are important, but they're usually for roles that do not have decision-making authority at the enterprise level. And if you're still doing that and you desire to step into higher senior leadership, then there's a disconnect. Because when you're in rooms with senior leadership, skip level or multiple levels above you, these kind of meetings happen once a quarter, or once every half a year, or sometimes once a year even, you get into these rooms. And if you're in that room, that happens not very frequently, and you're giving status updates and progress reports, there's so much information and so many details because a lot of activity has happened in between these rare meetings with them. And when you give these reports, there's so much activity and so much information and data that what you're really doing is you're increasing the cognitive load of these senior leaders. And whenever you are speaking to someone and they have a lot of ill-bound decisions to make in their role, and you're increasing their cognitive load, then you appear as someone who really doesn't know how to support someone at that level, or think at that level, or be leveraged in that level. So there's a disconnect. And that's why when you're giving your status reports and you're giving your progress updates, you can be recognized for your productivity. Absolutely. You can be recognized for your efficiency. You can be recognized for the things you've achieved. But that does not mean that you will be visible in front of the senior leaders at that executive level. And that's why habit number 2 is also a symptom of the visibility trap, not being seen by senior leadership who has the opportunities, who has the advancement connections, and where you really have to be visible in front of them to be able to receive those opportunities. And the reason why this happens is because leadership, they're not paying for activities. What they're really paying for is quality level decisions. Are you someone who demonstrates the ability and the capacity to make these quality decisions? Or in your presentations and your conversations, are you presenting yourself as someone who has status updates and progress reports? Habit number 3 is asking for permission or feedback when you should be managing trade-offs. Most professionals believe that asking for permission or approval or asking for feedback is polite. Right? It is the prudent thing to do. But here's the thing about that. When you're constantly asking for approval to move forward with something or feedback on how you're doing, what you're really doing is you're confessing that you have a dependency of thought. So for example, if you're constantly asking for approval to move forward with a thing, what you're really confessing is that you're not completely comfortable with carrying the consequences of moving forward with that decision. Or if you're constantly seeking for permission, you are confessing that you depend on others, or you depend on them to be able to think through this decision because you're uncomfortable with handling or carrying the weight of the consequences. On the other side, if you're constantly seeking for their feedback on how you're doing, what you're confessing is that you're not independent enough to know how you're doing yourself. So you need someone else to give you that feedback. And here's the thing, when you're constantly seeking these things, it shows that you're dependent in your thinking. But what senior leaders desire is someone who they can partner with, who is independent thought leader. And that's why in an organization, one of the many things that signals independence as a thought leader is the ability to make quality decisions by managing and navigating the trade-offs. Because in a business setting, there are multiple trade-offs. And that's exactly why the more senior you go vertically in an organization, the more intense and the more difficult and the more complex decisions are. Because every decision you make will have less and less information. And as a result of that, there are greater risks, more unknowns, more nuances, and more trade-offs. And at the end of the day, what we need to be able to do is we need to be a good dealer and a good understanding individual when it comes to navigating these trade-offs. So if you find yourself seeking approval, asking for feedback, or even desiring that feedback or desiring that some sort of approval in order to move forward, then check in with yourself. Are you an independent thought leader? What steps do you need to take to become an independent thought leader? Are you surrounded by individuals who are able to show you and guide you and mentor you to become independent thought leaders? And that's what is valuable at the senior leadership level. Habit number 4. Escalating a problem without a recommended solution. Now, I see this a lot when I am coaching executives or senior level managers, is this whole process of escalation. And in every organization, there is a process of escalation because you see on the org chart, when you read the org chart from bottom up, it's lines of communication, right? Who do we escalate to? Who do we know who to report to when there's problems? But here's what I always tell my clients, is that when you escalate a problem, and you don't have a recommendation and you just escalate the problem, you didn't just escalate the problem, you escalated the thinking. And when you do this, you escalate upwards, what you're really demonstrating is that you really haven't thought it through, and you're really demonstrating they may know that you're problem aware, but what you've also done by escalating the problem, what you've also done is that you have increased the number of decisions that your senior leaders must make now in order to solve this problem. So then you're increasing their cognitive load. And what senior leaders want is someone they can partner with who's independent thought leader, like I mentioned before. But also what they're looking for is a steward of options, someone who has thought through problems, to understand the root causes of problems, and to bring forward their insights and their recommendations on how to move forward. And when you do this, you lighten the load of senior leadership, and you show your stewardship in resources when you offer a recommendation. And that's why when you really look into it, the habit of escalation is there, but the process is there in an organization. But the process is there for a reason. If you're someone who desires to step up into senior leadership, you want to become the person that others escalate problems to. You don't want to be the person who continues to escalate problems. Habit number 5 is treating your job description as the edge of your responsibility. Most professionals believe that staying in their lane is the prudent thing to do, and it makes them trustworthy, right? And it comes from a lot of, again, conditioned beliefs that, well, if I stay in my lane and I just concentrate on what I was asked to do, what I'm responsible for, then I'm more trustworthy that way, and I'm prudently upholding my responsibilities. And if you do that, then what you're really signaling to leadership, senior leadership, is that, well, you're dependable and you're reliable. And as a result of that, you can be seen as competent, but on the flip side, you're also not seen as someone who's expandable. And if you are an individual who desires to grow beyond your current role, because chances are you're watching this because you've been feeling like your current job description, your responsibilities you're beyond that. You'd like to move beyond that. And this is where it's important that you got to understand senior leadership, they desire to have talented people who can see the whole road. And here's how I teach my clients when it comes to job descriptions. You got your job in your company, and chances are you applied to a job description. And in most organizations, especially organizations that are growing, that are in industries that are growing fast, that are producing a lot of different products and services, and that's almost all organizations. Organizations like that are growing. And if you're staying in your current role and you're not growing, then that means you're not growing with the organization. And it also means that your job description, the faster an organization grows, the faster your job description becomes outdated or expired. So then this is what I see. A lot of clients that come into my mentorship, they've been with the company just over a year, and they show me the job description they applied to get their role. And I ask them, of these checklists, the responsibilities on your job descriptions, which one of these are you still doing? And how many more additional ones are you doing on top of that? And they were able to reflect in the past year of this organization that past month 1 of that job, the job description already looked very different. Now, you might be listening and you might resonate with this. Some of you, sometimes your job may have evolved slower or even quicker than that. But the point is, a job description is a minimum contract. And if you desire to move beyond that, then it's important to demonstrate your expandability. Expandability is not about doing other people's work. It is about creating leveraged peripheral value. Let me explain this using an example. In a forest, trees do not survive because they are isolated competitors of each other. They survive through an underground network of roots and of all these networks underground that flow nutrients across the entire ecosystem. And as a result of that, the whole forest resilience is much stronger because of the flow of nutrients in this ecosystem. Now, organizations work in a very similar way because organizations themselves are ecosystems. So authority in an organization, it flows to the person who behaves like that network, that of an individual who flows through the network and upholds the integrity of the outcome. And that's how you create leveraged peripheral value. If you're somebody looking to step into senior leadership roles and you want to step out of the employee mindset and into a strategic enterprise level mindset, then I invite you to work with me. Maybe you want to have my eyes on your situation. Maybe you want consultation with me to know how to create peripheral leveraged value. Or maybe you want to know how to build that network around you and how to really adopt the ideas in this video, then I invite you to book a call and speak to one of my career advisors. The link is below this video in the description. And when you are on this call, they're really going to explore what's your situation right now, where are your goals, or where you want to be. And then we're going to talk about what the strategy is from getting you from point A to point B. And if it makes sense and you come in, then you're going to be personally guided and mentored by me and my coaches as well. And in our mentorship, this is where we're going to install the executive mastery operating system so you can start thinking like a senior executive, an enterprise level senior executive, and start to adapt the habits at that level, which is what I call thinking in a higher order altitude. So if you desire to work with me, then click the link below, and I look forward to working with you on the inside. Habit number 6 is using perfection as a hiding strategy. Most professionals believe that perfection signals excellence, but to senior leaders, it's really more like fear disguised in a nice suit. Because let's face it, when you're over polishing, when you're trying to be perfect, sometimes it's often because we're trying to protect ourselves from exposure, right? Because we kind of hope that when it's flawless, that we're less likely to be criticized or judged by other people. And that's really what we're trying to avoid, is criticism and fear of judgment. Right? But here's the thing about that. The more you fear criticism, or the more you try to avoid judgment or avoid criticism, the harder it will be for you, the harder you will fall when you do receive criticism and judgment. Notice I said when, not if. In a business environment, which you are in one, if you work for a company, you're in a business environment, assessments are necessary. Why? Because when you measure it, it improves. And what is a measurement? It's an assessment. Right? So what gets measured is your performance. It's your character. It's how you show up. It's how you and what you said and didn't say. What gets measured gets improved. So assessments are happening constantly. And the more you try to avoid the opposite, what you want is the recognition, what you want is praise and recognition. The opposite of that is criticism and judgment. So the more you seek avoidance of one, the more you desire the opposite, which is praise and recognition, because you fear criticism and judgment a lot. And because criticism and judgment is inevitable in a business environment, it's going to be very rough for you. It's going to be like a roller coaster when you do receive it. And I'm saying this to you because I work with a lot of senior executives. And I also work with some mid-level managers and senior managers as well. And one of the things that I hear a lot, it's quite often, is there's a lot of trauma in the workplace, right? People have been hurt in their previous jobs when they were criticized for something, or they received feedback and it was it took a shot at their self-confidence. And as a result of that, they were never able to get their self-confidence back. And it affected them. Even though they quit that job, they moved to a different company, and they kept moving to a different company, the trauma carried with them the lack of self-confidence, the inability to bounce back from it, the haunting of that past trauma. And that's why I'm sharing this with you today. It's a real experience that people can have. And it really comes from this, the addiction, the need to have praise and recognition. And the more you desire it, the more you fear its opposite, which is criticism and judgment. So what do? Well, number 1, recognize the psychology in perfectionism. And then number 2, stop using perfectionism as insulation. Instead, use quality as leverage, which means that you're looking for and finding the minimum effective dose to make the right decision at the right time. And here's why this is important, is because senior leaders want to know that you are someone who can make quality decisions under time pressure, under energy pressure, under immense pressure without collapsing. And habit number 7 is defending your work instead of improving the system. Most professionals believe that defending their work shows confidence. And this is especially true in my work with people who are educated with graduate level degrees. So think PhDs and master's degrees. Because in academia, when you earn your degree, you have to defend your work. You have a dissertation, you stand in front of a board of committee, and then there's a defense. And in the academic world, that is valued. Why? Because in academia, they're trying to uphold and protect the purity of knowledge. And defenses are important in academia because in your dissertation, it's your unique research. And as a result of that, you need to be able to defend why this contributes to the body as a whole. And you need to be able to defend how you design your experiments or your research to come up with that knowledge or that interpretation, which makes sense in academia. Now, the problem where a lot of people get tripped up is that they bring they carry that thinking over into the business world, the defending. And that's where you run into problems. Because while in some contexts, defending your work does show confidence, but in a business setting, when leadership sees an individual defending their work, what that signals is a lack of ownership. Because in a business setting, there is no need for one single individual to constantly be defending their perspectives, or be defending their processes, or be defending their solutions or their recommendations. There's no instance where one individual needs to present that way. And when you do, it shows up as an individual who doesn't take ownership of a different way of thinking or a different perspective, or doesn't take ownership of their incompleteness in coming up with that solution, for example. So think about it this way. In leadership levels in a business organization, explanations are cheap. And when you're defending, it doesn't come across as the same way it does in academia. When you're defending, you're explaining away why you think that way, or you're explaining away why you're putting this insight forward. And that's really cheap. Explanations are a dime a dozen. What they're really looking for is follow through. Follow through on what? Follow through on what happens next. If you're defending your position, have no doubt about it, feedback is going to come. You're going to get feedback from people around you, from senior leaders around you. When feedback arrives, what are you going to do? Here's what individuals with an employee mindset, when feedback arrives, what they do is they protect and they defend their identity. They protect themselves because it's self-protection. So then what I'm sharing with you is that stop defending yourself. Stop defending your work. Stop trying to prove yourself. Nothing to prove. Stop trying to treat feedback as a verdict on you. But instead, when feedback arrives, look at it as a signal on what is your operating system. What is it? What has it been? Because when leadership is looking for follow through, they're looking for individuals who are willing and able to adopt and adjust when feedback arrives. Adopt and adjust their operating system. Adopt and adjust their way of thinking. Adopt and adjust their way of doing. Adopt and adjust their way of being. They're looking for individuals who can and are willing to do that, and that is follow through. These 7 habits are predictive signals of your operating system, whereas the individuals with the employee mindset say, I execute what I'm given. The enterprise strategist mindset says, I reduce uncertainty, I protect the outcomes, and I am the steward of the ecosystem.